Front yard design ideas. What makes a small cottage garden feel so charming? I like to start by saying it's never really about size or budget for me. It's more about the emotion a cottage garden creates as a whole. From my perspective, what matters most is the atmosphere, that soft, slightly nostalgic feeling that makes the space feel lived in and familiar. What I mean is, it's not about how perfect it looks, but how it makes you feel when you're standing in it. Welcome to Arca Studio Design, where I love exploring how even the smallest outdoor spaces can feel magical with the right approach. Today, I'm diving into a question that I think many homeowners quietly wonder about. What really makes a small cottage front yard feel so charming? It's not about size or budget in my experience, it's about how everything comes together emotionally. There's a softness and personality in cottage gardens that feels almost nostalgic. And honestly, that's what keeps drawing people back to this timeless style. What I like about cottage gardens is their freedom. In my perspective, I actually enjoy that they don't try to stay overly controlled or symmetrical. What I mean is, letting plants grow a bit wild gives the whole space a more relaxed personality. I personally feel that this looseness makes the garden feel more welcoming compared to rigid, highly structured designs. I think one of the biggest secrets behind a charming cottage garden is its sense of imperfection. In my experience, the beauty comes from letting things grow a little wild rather than perfectly controlled. What I love about this is how it creates a relaxed, welcoming atmosphere instead of something overly curated. Unlike modern minimalist yards that can feel rigid, cottage gardens invite you in with their natural flow. It's less about precision and more about personality. I also like how layering changes everything visually. From my perspective, placing plants in different heights, ground covers, mid-height blooms, and taller plants creates a sense of fullness that feels almost effortless. What I mean is, it tricks the eye into seeing depth even in small spaces. I personally love how this makes a tiny front yard feel generous and abundant. Another thing I've noticed is how layering plays a huge role in making a small space feel full and alive. I think when plants are arranged in tiers, low, medium, and tall, it creates depth that tricks the eye into seeing more space. What I love about this approach is that it feels abundant without being overwhelming. In my experience, even a narrow front yard can feel lush if you layer it thoughtfully. It's like building a living painting right outside your door. What I like about color in cottage gardens is how unplanned it feels. In my perspective, the mix of soft tones with occasional bold bursts creates a natural rhythm that feels alive. What I mean is, it doesn't follow strict rules, and that unpredictability is what gives it charm. I personally think too much color coordination can actually make a garden feel less interesting. Color is also something I think people often underestimate. Cottage gardens don't rely on a single palette, they embrace a mix of soft pastels and occasional vibrant blooms. What I love about this is how it creates a sense of spontaneity. In my experience, too much coordination can actually take away the charm. A little unpredictability in color makes the space feel more natural and joyful. I also like how pathways change the experience of a garden. From my perspective, even a simple stone or gravel path can completely shift how you move through the space. What I mean is, it creates direction and curiosity, even in a very small yard. I personally enjoy how it turns a garden into a little journey rather than just a view. you ever notice how some small gardens feel instantly inviting while others feel flat? I think pathways are often the missing piece. In my experience, even a simple stone or gravel path adds movement and curiosity. What I love about this detail is how it encourages exploration, even in a tiny yard. It gives the space a story, not just a look. What I like about fences and gates is the mood they create. In my perspective, a slightly weathered fence or an old wooden gate adds a sense of story and history. What I mean is, it frames the garden in a way that feels intimate rather than exposed. I personally feel this kind of enclosure makes everything inside feel more meaningful. I've also found that fences and borders play a surprisingly emotional role. A low wooden fence or a slightly weathered gate can completely change the mood. I think these elements create a sense of enclosure without feeling restrictive. What I love about this is how it frames the garden like a picture. It makes everything inside feel intentional and special. I also like the imperfect details that naturally appear. From my perspective, crooked lines or uneven planting don't ruin a cottage garden, they actually improve it. What I mean is, those small flaws make the space feel more real and less staged. I personally think perfection often removes character from a garden. One surprising insight I've learned is that small imperfections actually make a garden more charming. A slightly crooked pathway or uneven planting can add character. In my experience, trying to make everything perfect often removes the soul of the space. What I love about cottage design is how it celebrates these little quirks. They make the garden feel human. What I like about garden seating is how it changes how you interact with the space. In my perspective, even a small bench or chair makes the garden feel like a place to stay, not just pass by. What I mean is, it shifts the garden from visual decoration into lived experience. I personally love that transformation. Furniture, even in small amounts, can transform the entire front yard. I think a simple bench or a tiny bistro set can turn the space into something usable, not just decorative. What I love about this is how it invites you to actually spend time there. In my experience, charm increases when a space feels lived in. It's not just about how it looks, it's about how it feels to sit there. I also like mixing different materials together. From my perspective, stone, wood, brick, and metal all bring different textures that complement each other beautifully. What I mean is, variety creates depth and richness that a single material can't achieve. I personally feel this mix makes the garden feel more grounded and natural. I also believe that mixing materials is key to achieving that authentic cottage look. Stone, wood, and even a bit of metal can work beautifully together. What I love about this combination is how it adds texture and depth. In my experience, using just one material can make a space feel flat. Variety, when done thoughtfully, brings everything to life. What I like about vertical gardening is how it expands small spaces. In my perspective, climbing plants and trellises help draw the eye upward and make everything feel taller. What I mean is, it adds dimension without taking up ground space. I personally enjoy how practical and beautiful this solution is at the same time. I've noticed that vertical space is incredibly important in smaller gardens. Climbing plants, trellises, or even hanging baskets can draw the eye upward. I think this makes the space feel taller and more dynamic. What I love about this is how it maximizes every inch without making the garden feel crowded. It's a smart way to add richness without adding clutter. I also like how cottage gardens feel connected to the house. From my perspective, the best ones don't feel separate from the home, they feel like they naturally spill out from it. What I mean is, the architecture and garden work together as one continuous experience. I personally think this connection is what makes the space feel truly complete. Another thing I always consider is how the front yard connects to the house itself. I think the most charming cottage gardens feel like a natural extension of the home. What I love about this is how it creates harmony between architecture and landscape. In my experience, when these elements feel disconnected, the overall charm is reduced. Cohesion makes everything stronger. What I like about fragrance in a garden is how emotional it is. In my perspective, scents like lavender, roses, or jasmine add a layer you can't see but definitely feel. What I mean is, it creates memory in a very subtle way. I personally believe scent is often what people remember most without realizing it. Fragrance is something I personally think adds an entirely different dimension to a garden. Plants like lavender or jasmine can create a sensory experience that goes beyond visuals. What I love about this is how it makes the space memorable. In my experience, scent is often what people remember most, even if they don't realize it at the time. I also like how seasonal change adds life to the garden. From my perspective, cottage gardens are never static, they constantly evolve with time. What I mean is, each season brings a different personality to the space. I personally enjoy that sense of ongoing transformation. also think seasonal change is part of what keeps a cottage garden interesting. Unlike static designs, these gardens evolve throughout the year. What I love about this is how it keeps the space feeling fresh and alive. In my experience, a garden that changes with the seasons never feels boring. It always gives you something new to appreciate. What I like when comparing cottage gardens to modern designs is the emotional contrast. In my perspective, modern gardens often feel clean and minimal, but sometimes a bit emotionally distant. What I mean is, cottage gardens feel warmer, more layered, and more personal. I personally feel their beauty comes from complexity, imperfection, and emotional richness. If I compare cottage gardens to more modern front yard designs, the difference is clear. Modern styles often prioritize clean lines and simplicity, which can be beautiful but sometimes feel a bit cold. I think cottage gardens offer warmth and personality in a way that's hard to replicate. What I love about this contrast is how it shows that charm often comes from complexity, not minimalism. Ultimately, I believe the charm of a small cottage front yard comes down to emotion, not size. It's about creating a space that feels welcoming, personal, and a little bit magical. So let me ask you, would you rather have a perfectly polished front yard or one that feels full of life and character? If you enjoyed this kind of design insight, don't forget to subscribe to Arca Studio Design for more ideas that help you transform everyday spaces into something truly special.